The whole purpose of this video is to give you a simple introduction to use Excel in the physics lab, and and this video will explain how to enter data and do some simple calculations and making scatter plots. At the end, doing a few more calculations with data. Entering data and doing simple calculation. Let's say that we have grades of 12 students, and we need to get their average and the standard deviation calculated, and you can do that in Excel very easily. And you can put this data as a column of data, and first you need to make a heading for that column, and here I name it as grade, and below that you put all the data without any space between, and then you can do the necessary calculation. And let's say that I want to calculate the average of this one and this data set, and I'll select the cell where I want to put the average, and it could be right below the set of data, or it could be somewhere here as well. This is the cell that I'm going to do that calculation, and I'll put an equal sign there, indicating or telling Excel that I'm going to do a calculation. In order to do this calculation, you need to call the function called average, and you can start writing this AV, and then the Excel will show you all the functions which starts with AV, and average is the one that you need to pick here, and you can double click on average. Okay, then this function comes up, and it basically requires you to enter numbers here. And in order to enter numbers here, what you need to do is that you simply highlight only the data starting from the first one to the last one, and then close the parentheses and then put enter. So you'll see that the average is given here like this. Okay, and let's say now we want to calculate the standard deviation. So to calculate the standard deviation, again that I select another cell and put equal sign. So the standard deviation, again do the same thing, highlight necessary data from the first one to the last one, and then close the parentheses and hit enter. So this will give you the standard deviation. And if you look at this number contains a lot of decimal places, and you can control the number of decimal places that appears, and you can do this kind of simple calculation. Okay, let us do a few more simple calculations. Let's say that we have another set of grades. Let's say the first one is grade 1 and the second one is grade 2, and I need to add the grade 1 and grade 2, and I need to perform this one for the two columns, and then again that I put equal sign here, and I'm going to add the first one plus sign to the second one, and then you can hit enter. So it will show that 19 as we know. Okay, and if you want to do this calculation for the whole column, and you can simply bring the cursor to the right hand bottom corner of the cell and simply drag it down. Okay, so it will do the calculation for you. And the same way, if you want to multiply the column 1 by column 2, or divide the column 1 by column 2, or anything can be done. Any kind of math operation can be done between the columns like that. As an again example, so let's say that I want to multiply grade 1 by grade 2. So then again put the equal sign, telling Excel that you are going to do a calculation. So the first one multiplied by the second one, so you get 90, and then get this one. So this is not a required operation in grading, but it was just to show you that how to do this calculation. Okay, now we can do a little bit different calculation, and let's say that we have this kind of data set. Okay, and we have set of measurements, mass measured in kilograms, and then we need to calculate the weight corresponding to these masses. And you see that the mass is represented by the letter M, or the symbol M, and the unit is kilogram, and I put the kilogram, the unit, at the heading of the column, and here Newton, at the heading of the column, and I'm not putting this data as like 1.5 kilogram. And if you do that, and Excel is unable to do any calculation with this data, and the unit should be put in the heading at the beginning of the column. So please remember that. And now I want to do this calculation, and since I have all the mass measurements, and I know that the weight is calculated by mass multiplied by the acceleration of gravity, and acceleration of gravity is represented by g, and since I need to multiply each of these numbers by this particular number 9.8, and I put that 9.8 in a cell. So here the particular cell is C10, okay, and I do this simple operation like this. It's equal, so 1.5 multiplied by 9.8, so that will do this calculation. But if I try to do the same thing, assuming that the Excel knows that I want to do the same thing for the rest of the cells, let's see what happens. It does something, but it is not quite right. It is not what we need. Okay, so to do the calculation properly, so we need to tell Excel that, okay, for the rest of the calculations, so always go back to this cell and multiply each number of the left side column here by this number. Okay, in order to give that instruction, so we need to enter data this way: equal sign and 1.5, which is K9 cell, you multiplied by again this one, and now we need to tell Excel make this cell reference to the below calculations as well. To do that, I put a dollar sign before the letter O, cell letter, and then right after the cell letter. Okay, so now you can hit enter. Again you see this calculation, and now you can do the bulk calculation for the whole column. Okay, alright, so now you know that how to do calculations with making a particular cell reference. And in some cases that you need to use pi, and pi is a never ending decimal, and actually that this is equal to 22 divided by 7. Okay, and if you want to get the value of pi at any time during the calculation, you put equal sign and write pi, and then put parentheses, nothing in between, so then hit enter. So that should give you the value. Now I'm going to show you how to make a scatter plot once we have data. Here we have this data given to us, and we want to plot y versus x. The first column represents data for x, and the second column represents data for y, and y is the dependent axis and x is the independent axis. To make the scatter plot, what I need to do is that I need to highlight data and then go to insert and select scatter. And when you select scatter, you see that there are several options, and you need to select without markers. Okay, so once you do that, so you see a graph appears here, and we need to name the axis, the y-axis and the x-axis. In order to do that, you have to select a chart layout, and here on the top you see different chart layouts, and let's say I'm going to pick this layout. Okay, that's layout 1. Okay, so then it provides me a way to enter the name of the y-axis and name of the x-axis, and also the chart title. Okay, so let me say the chart title is y versus x and for the x I can write down x, which is measured in meters, and for y I would write it as y also measured in meters.
Okay, so now we have the graph and need to figure out how to draw the trend line for this one. As it is obvious from this graph, you see that there is a tendency for a straight line here, and in order to get the straight line drawn using the least square method calculation, so you pick a point, it could be any data point, and then right click on it and you can see add trend line. So there are several options and you can select add trend line, and by default so it becomes linear, or otherwise that if you want to fit another type of curve here, so you can do that as well, but here obviously it is a straight line. Okay, so it is linear, and you can select display equation on chart. Okay, and it gives us this equation. Okay, so close it. Now we are pretty much done with this graph. Now we know that the slope of the graph is 5.0281 as it appears here, and this number is the slope of the this number is the intercept of the graph. Let us do two other graphs just for explanation, and here we have x versus t and y versus t, and t is time and x is some distance and y is also some distance. And let's say that what kind of graph we are going to get for this first one. Again, select data and insert scatter and get a graph something like this. Okay, so it is a second order polynomial, or it's a parabola. So a trend line, and you see that by default it try to make a straight line here, but we know that it is not right, so it is a polynomial, so it fits perfectly fits for a second order polynomial. Okay, so if you want to display the equation on the chart, you can do that as well. Then close and pick a layout, and this is your layout, and again go back to a trend line. Okay, so again you can do the same thing, put the chart title and the axis title, and then you have a nice graph here. So I forgot to put the formula there, so you can do that, display equation on chart. Okay, so this is the formula for the graph. And let us see what kind of graph we get for the other one. Insert scatter. Okay, so select this layout and a trend line. That's also a second order polynomial. You can see that display equation on chart. Okay, you see that making scatter plots are really easy. So only thing is that you need to prepare the data table correctly, and once you prepare the data table correctly, so you can make a scatter plot very easily.